Content marketing can be an extremely challenging part of marketing, especially since you, as a writer, whether you're in-house or a consultant, have to write content that one, resonates with the audience, and two, makes your client happy with the work you did. And even if you meet all those goals, you still have no idea if that content is going to perform or become successful. Maybe no one downloads it because of bad programming strategies. Who knows? Furthermore, the worst part about content is, as a consultant or even an internal writer, you might find yourself writing about topics you have no business writing about, you don't know about, you're not an industry professional. Or even worse, you just have absolutely no interest in learning about it, you just want to get it done. Today, our guest, who we're bringing back in the studio basement, we're going to be talking about how Kevin Flanagan, who's been a journalist, a content writer, and has had a career that spanned 4 decades writing content for both B2B and B2C. And he's going to discuss how you find the best ways to come up to speed on a topic that you know nothing about, and how to convince yourself to want to be hungry to learn more, to write effective pieces of content. Let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to our next episode of Business Over Brews. We're continuing on bringing Kevin Flanagan back in the studio. Earlier we talked about the creative process and how you actually create a repeatable process to create content for your clients or for your company, the company you're working for. So Kevin, content manager at Devo, he's been writing content for 30 years plus. He's a former journalist. He's been constantly writing assets for both B2B and B2C audiences. Kevin, welcome back in.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here once again.
I know. Well, it's like we never hung up because we never technically did. But today, what we're going to be talking about is what it's like to write and how do you actually execute writing for pieces of content that you have no business writing for, whether you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to the topic for the piece you're writing for, or if you have absolutely no interest. For example, if you have to write about lawn chairs, that doesn't sound too exciting. And so we're going to go through the process of making sure you understand how to articulate yourself well enough to become a subject matter expert, how to come up to speed fast enough, and how do you fake that interest and that enthusiasm in something that might be relatively boring for you. But before we get into that, Kevin, what are you drinking now? Are you still on that Guinness?
I am still enjoying Guinness. It is the national beer of my people, and I proudly carry it forward. I found out I'm 99.3% Irish, according to my DNA test. So
Not
basically,
bad.
this is my blood. I'm just, I'm topping off.
Well, I am topping off my Sam Winter here, which I've always been a fan of the Sam products. I'm a typical, simple Boston-born man. Smells just like a great old failed marriage, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation because there are times as a content creator, you're told, hey, I need a white paper on how B2B software can work in the agriculture vertical. And you go, I have no idea how I'm supposed to put that piece of content together. So when you have someone approach you, whether you're a consultant or you are an in-house content creator, you have to create a piece of content that you know nothing about. What do you do? Panic?
My best friend. Well, no, you can panic, but if it's your job, ultimately you have to do it. If you're a freelancer and you've accepted the assignment, maybe even taken an upfront retainer payment, you pretty much have to do it unless you tearfully want to return the money, and you'll never get business from that client again. So what I would say is this: your best friend in that situation is whatever mobile phone you have. I happen to use a free app called otter.ai, and it gives you an on-the-go transcript and a pretty good quality recording. So even if I'm on a Zoom call and somebody is recording the Zoom call, it's not my call. So rather than have to say, hey, Chris, could you send me the link to that recording of the Zoom call from last Tuesday that we were on? I just record it myself. I get this rough transcript, and I can use that to say, okay, this is what's going on. So you're asked to write about lawn chairs. You've sat in them. You can interview your rear end and say, how did you find that chair? And that might get you the first 2 lines in a story that's supposed to be, 2,000 words or whatever. So what you have to do is you have to find that person who is enthusiastic and knowledgeable about it and willing to give you a modicum of time. You record the conversation. obviously letting them know, hey, I'm going to record this because it'll save you time by not having me pause as I'm taking notes going, ooh, hold that thought as you write something out. And then they lose the thought. Exactly. So you have a conversation. You put the phone in the middle of the table. They know they're being recorded. And you ask them all the questions. And then what you want to do is you want to take that raw material, okay? Mm-hmm. It's the newly chopped down trees that are just in the process of being turned into lumber that can then be used to build something. And you want to basically
it's a great analogy.
Out, there you go. I'm a word guy. So you want to figure out, well, what did this person have to say? What's their take on whatever the subject is? And then you kind of chunk it up. You start doing this in your head. You take the written transcript, or maybe you just start writing, listening to it, and get some ideas down, bullet form or whatever. So the idea is you let that person be the storyteller, and you apply your expertise to organize it, to come up with an interesting opening, to make sure that, again, in the body, if you can come up with bulleted lists, if you can come up with an outside quote from some expert that can really shine a light on what it is you're doing, and you want to have a strong finish. You can use humor, you can use fear in a way, if it's something where, if you don't start saving for retirement, one day you're still going to be retired and you're not going to have any money. So there's always ways there's emotional, I'll call it manipulation, but it's really just figuring out what the right emotions are and then making sure that you kind of play to them or cover it. So the bottom line is, if you know nothing about a subject, but you still have to write about it, you've got to have either a subject matter expert or you have to have some sort of source material.
Yeah.
You don't want to plagiarize, obviously, even if it's the company's own stuff, especially if they want something fresh and new. But there usually are many ways to say the same thing, but in a different, more updated way. Every writer worth anything has their own style. Some are very serious and some are very silly, and some hopefully are a blend of those because you want to be as flexible as possible. So you give back to the person what they said, and there's a lot of value in that. Number one, it makes them feel good. And if they said something good and you made it even better by how you edited it, by how you pruned it, by how you let into it or let out of it or whatever, the person is generally going to be, hey, you made me sound really good. Thanks. When you make up quotes for people. When I started doing my business writing in PR, and I thought that you literally went into someone with kind of a notebook and a pen and said, so Chris, we're putting out this news release that you'll be quoted in, and it's about whatever. What do you have to say about that? And the person started going, well, and grabbed their lapels like the mayor in some 1950s movie pontificating about whatever. Nobody does that. They all go, I don't know, just make something up. And when I found out that that's how it was done, I was both horrified and elated. Because I'm like, I can do anything. Look, I've got the power. So the bottom line is you give people back their own words, their own ideas, but you do it in your way. You organize it, you mix it up a little bit, you apply your own skill to make it as interesting, as informative, whatever it needs to be. So that's what happens when you don't know anything about anything. You have to do some research. You have to read, you have to absorb.
It sounds like it's the foundation of becoming a journalist, as far as how I'm picking this up. Just like you would with any news report, if you're a journalist, you have no idea what you're about to get yourself into. You're interviewing someone to get a story about a topic, and you pull that story from the person you're interviewing. It really has nothing to do about how well you articulate or write. It's about how you capture that information from a third party. It is foundational journalism in a way.
You have to be curious. I don't know any writer who isn't curious, who doesn't have kind of I wonder how they do that. Or, let me repeat the thought you just said back to you in my own words, because that's one way that we absorb.
Yes.
It's almost like how we memorize things in school. It wasn't just to, exercise our memories. It was to help it absorb into our brains and hopefully be able to call it up on a test or in a writing assignment or whatever. So the whole idea is, if you know nothing about something, you literally say, so tell me about lawn furniture. And hopefully they're not going to say, well, it's furniture that you use when you're sitting outside, typically on a lawn. Anything else? I mean, you're in trouble. That's all you get. But hopefully you have somebody, or if it isn't the person who was supposed to be the subject matter expert, maybe there's someone else you can kind of pivot to, pick his or her brain, put it together with what you were able to get from that first individual, and again, come up with something. Okay. In a way, you're a cook. And, the client may want filet mignon, but all they gave you was a pound of, 85% hamburger. So you can't make filet mignon, but maybe you can make a decent burger or a meatloaf or a few
good
meatballs.
Burger you can't go wrong with.
Exactly. So you have to be flexible. You have to be curious. You have to be willing to fall on your face a little bit. And by that, I mean, you have to say, what I think I hear you saying is this, or how about if we said it this way? And that they, you might get that sort of pathetic laugh, like, boy, you clearly don't understand this, do you? And it's a little embarrassing. It shouldn't happen too often.
There's a point in there that I'm realizing as I'm interviewing you and as I interview more and more people. One thing I learned when especially building customer stories for companies I've worked for, what'll happen is you ask a question, and while that person's answering it, you're not listening to them. You're thinking about the next question on your list you're about to ask them and when you can fit that in to ask them. And you're not engaging with what they're saying. And what I've found out is you actually miss the most spectacular parts of the story by not engaging with those follow-ups and the question that they're asking when your mind is elsewhere. And it sounds like that is something that just becoming a good interviewer is going to be a huge benefit when you're trying to pull information on something like this that you just have no idea about what to write about.
Absolutely. And that holds true whether the person is a font of information. You still need to make sure you extract the right information, the best information, or if they're not very talkative and they think, well, I told you in 2 sentences exactly what this 90-page thesis should be. What more do you want from me, son? I mean, you have to go with the flow. But as I said, you also have to be willing to fall on your face a little bit by trying something and seeing how it plays. But you have to just ask questions. Yeah. What happened? I mean, who, what, when, where, how, and why? Why does this matter? So what is it that you've come up with in terms of your technology or your consumer product or your better mousetrap? Why is it a better mousetrap? If you don't have curiosity and you don't like talking to people, you don't enjoy learning new things, being a business writer might be a very tenuous career choice because you might not really have what it takes to succeed long term and to make a living out of it and a career out of it.
I don't know what careers you would be good in with that. Actually, it sounds so sad to not be hungry and not want to learn,
Yeah, I guess. But I suppose there might be things where if you're the subject matter expert, you can really dive deep on something. But if you're the writer who kind of, is like the hummingbird that goes from flower to flower and, takes the nectar, there are 2 kinds of people. I mean, there are the people who want to be the lawn chair subject matter expert. And then there's the person who's like, hey, I wrote an article about lawn chairs once. I mean, that's it. I've been there, done that. So hopefully we all gravitate to what it is we do best. But you do have to do that. Now, if you're a freelancer and someone says, hey, I'm looking for somebody to, write a website or a series of ebooks or, maybe something fairly substantive that could be very lucrative, but it's about this. And whatever this is just completely unappealing to you, or it seems too hard, right? Or it seems too difficult. It seems too daunting. if you're in a position where you can do this, say, you know what? I don't think I'm the right person for you.
Pass on
Maybe
it.
you've got a friend who does the same type of work, and you could say, you can call my friend Bill or my friend Betty. I'll make an introduction. I just don't think I'm the right person for this. I really don't have any expertise. You don't have to say, I'm falling asleep just having this 2-minute conversation about possibly working for you. You don't need to be insulting or what have you. It's not good business.
Mhm.
But if you have the option and you find a topic just mind-numbingly boring, or maybe it doesn't jibe with your political tastes or your social tastes or whatever, if you can, don't do it. If you work for a company and you don't really have the option more than once in a blue moon of opting out of something, hopefully you chose the right company to work for, where that's only going to come up very, very rarely.
Yeah. Sure.
Because you can't always pick what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be flexible about that. And that's one of the great things about writing, is even if you work for a single company that does a single or maybe, a few variations on a single thing, you can find something interesting and something challenging, because there are different types of writing. Writing for the web is very different than writing. I mean, you don't even see white papers anymore. White papers, if you see them at all, they're written by engineers who maybe need a really good editor, but they have to be written by somebody who has this really intense knowledge and can do the diagrams and the charts and all that other stuff. And then if you're an editor, you should be able to go in and edit, even if you don't understand it. If you know English, assuming it was written in English, you should be able to, and perhaps it was intended to be written in English, it just didn't pan out that way. But you need to be able to go in and say, okay, I can help make this the best it can be.
Yeah.
But for the most part, even when you work for one company, there's all kinds of stuff you're doing. And it can be fun just to do different things. Also, figuring out who the client is. And this is particularly important when you work for, a given company where, say, the CEO or the head of product or the salesperson who wants to be actively involved in the creation of the materials that his or her sales team bring to the market to help generate leads. Well, maybe marketing generates leads, but sales obviously wants to engage with prospects and turn those prospects into paying customers. So sometimes the people that you work for and with just don't think the way you do and don't have the same sensibility and all that, but you have to figure that out. When you write for a CEO, especially a new CEO, meaning you're new to the company, or they may have joined the company, or they were over here in some department that you never interacted with, and then they became the CEO, and you're like, I don't know this person. I really don't know what to expect. It's very unlikely that you're going to say, I've seen no indication of this, but I'm guessing this person has a killer sense of humor. I mean, if you've seen it, great. But if you haven't seen it, you definitely don't want to start with some play on words or something really off the wall, because the odds of them going, well, that's the best thing I've ever seen, would appear to be slim. What you want to do is play it safe, play it straight down the fairway, be factual, be interesting. Everything should be interesting. And then over time, if they say, you can lighten that up a little bit. I think I have a pretty good sense of humor, and I like to really maybe grab the reader by the lapel or by the throat, I guess, since no one seems to wear anything as lapels, but grab them by the throat and make them go, oh, what the heck was that? Okay, cool. But you don't go into it the first time saying, hi, we've just met, but again, I think I'm going to write something that is going to be, a killer at the next Friars Club roast. And they're like, well, that's not what I do. So you do have to figure it out. And it's great. That's one of the great things about being in-house, as opposed to a freelancer who might go from client to client and project to project, but the totality of their work involves many different things. That can be very invigorating because, hey, every day is different. But when you do work for one company, it's pretty cool to kind of become an expert. You're never going to be as expert as the engineers who built the product, or the product managers who manage it, or the product marketers even, whose job it is to sort of bridge the world between the product management team and the public. But nevertheless, you are, unless you really work hard to avoid it, you are going to pick up a lot, and you're going to be able to apply a lot more expertise. If the work you do 2 years into being at a company isn't significantly better than the work you did 2 weeks into being that company, either you're Hemingway or you're terrible, because there has to be growth. There has to be absorption. There has to be osmosis. I mean, that's probably one of the things that I think at this point in my career, it's not really bothering me, but I'm sure if I were much earlier in my career working remotely, I haven't been in the office now in 9 months. I mean, you know, that's long enough to have a baby.
You could have had a kid in that time. Yeah.
Exactly. So
we did.
Right. But you lose that picking things up just by you know, being at your desk and doing your email, and you hear a conversation that isn't private. It's about the business, but you kind of half listen and you're like, that's an interesting way to describe what it is we do. You file it away. It's all part of the writer's process. So there's just so much to it, but flexibility, creativity, and a willingness to learn, and a willingness to work it by putting the effort into recording things and trying to pull information out of people. I think it's fun. I really enjoy what I do. Not every day is a picnic, but I don't know anybody for whom every day is a picnic unless, you know, they're in a basket making business or, you know, something. I don't know. So you just have to go with it and try to make the most out of it. And hopefully you do it well enough that you make a nice living and can live the life you want to live, doing something you love.
Before we tail this off, there's one thing you said that really resonated with me, and that was talking to a customer. Again, if you're writing for sledgehammers or lawn chairs, you can talk to the engineer and they can say, almost like when Dyson vacuums came out, they're like, we have a new vacuum, and you don't lose suction. There's this technical reason behind it that sounds exciting. It might be revolutionary, but it's boring. But when you talk to a customer that resonates with, and they're jazzed about it, and they're excited to tell you why they chose your product or your solution as opposed to others, that in itself gets me excited to hear when someone else is excited. And that is a way, if I got a topic that I'm not excited about, if it's something that I find boring, hearing the excitement of someone else that is the target demographic for it, and hear them speak to it and the reasons why they're excited, that gets me energized, and that makes me a much better writer. So
I agree. And play off that energy whenever you can, whether it's internal or external, because if it's there, take advantage of it.
Yeah. So Kevin, again, thank you so much. I know this was a quick episode, but it was absolutely fantastic to talk about what do you do as a content writer when you have no idea about the topic that you're writing about? And what if you're not even interested in it? Kevin, thank you so much again for joining, and cheers.
Cheers to you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
And if you out there haven't done it yet, I would greatly appreciate a like and a subscribe. And if you have any questions, whether it's topic suggestions or topics that we've spoken about, comment on them below. I promise you I will answer every question that somebody posts. I have really nothing else better to do with my life. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.
This episode is sponsored by me. I sponsored this episode because I paid for everything. I paid for that lamp. I paid for that camera. I paid for that tripod. I paid for this fill light. I paid for this laptop. I paid for this microphone. You know, I might have actually stolen the microphone. Every penny I save goes into this channel. All right, why is every light on in this house? We're not made of money here, people. So please, help me out and subscribe to the channel. 71, not a chance. Look, every facet of this channel is financed through my own pocket. So every subscribe, like, and comment I personally appreciate, and I will reply to. So please subscribe and help me out. Appreciate it. Listen, people, we are not made of money. If you are cold, put on a sweater.